Hi, Stephen. How are you?
I'm good, Nancy. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Vegan Pulse. And first of all, let's start with where you're located and how you came to veganism.
Yeah, so I'm in the UK. I live in the middle of Scotland, in a place called Fife. Some people might know of Fife because that St Andrews is the famous golf course that sits in Fife. So kind of halfway between the two main cities in Scotland, Glasgow and Edinburgh. So that's where I stay, right in the heart of Scotland, which thankfully we're moving into spring. It's been a long winter so far. In terms of veganism, I'm 54, just recently turned 54. I went vegetarian when I was 18, and I've been vegan for over 20 years now. Unlike a lot of new vegans who seem to know the exact date they transitioned to being vegan, I didn't make a note of the date, but I do know what motivated me to become vegan, and it was a kind of flyer that came through the door for one of the animal charities that I supported, a kind of campaigning group. And you'll probably remember this, Nancy, in the not so distant past, even a lot of animal protection groups wouldn't talk about veganism because they felt like it was too extreme and it would put off potential donors who were vegetarian, etc. But this particular one focused on the milk industry, and it was an image of a pile of dead male dairy calves just lying there like a piece of rubbish in a yard. And I remember seeing the image and being really disturbed by it. And I could shake the image. And within about 3 days, both myself and my partner, who was also vegetarian at the time, we both went vegan, and we've never looked back. And probably my biggest regret in life is not going vegan at an earlier stage, which so yeah, I had never really quite joined the dots with the milk industry and the egg industry, and yeah, that was I regret that, but yeah, I'm trying to use um, my energy, I suppose, to try and encourage other people to join the dots or cope with living in a non-vegan world. Yeah, so
True, and that's what a lot of vegans say. The
mm,
only thing I wish is that I would have done it sooner. I know I wish I would have done it sooner
yeah,
myself.
yeah.
So, you are a counselor. So, what inspired you to focus specifically on vegan mental health, and what gaps do you see in the support available to vegans right now?
So yeah, so I've done quite a wide variety of different advocacy and activism over the years. But in terms of counselling, I in my early 20s, a couple of people had said to me, I was obviously just vegetarian at the time. A couple of people said, "Oh, you're a real good listener. You'd make a good counsellor." So I went and did a part-time course for a year on person-centered counselling. Did it, enjoyed it, found it interesting, but at the time, I decided not to take it any further forward for a couple of reasons. One, that type of counselling, which it can be really good. I personally it didn't really fit particularly well with me. Um, and um, and the second thing, I suppose, at the time, I thought, how much life experience do you really have in your mid 20s, which shouldn't really be a barrier. There's plenty of capable counsellors, but at the time, I thought, no, I don't think that this is right for me. And it kind of sat there for quite a while. And every now and again, I would think, am I going to do something with this or not? And then probably about 8 years ago or so, I thought, I need to do something with this, either go and take it forward or just put it to bed. So I went and looked at different types of counselling courses, and I decided to do a course on cognitive behavioral therapy, and so it was a 2 year part-time course, pretty intensive course, I have to say. And at the time when I was doing the course, obviously it's a general course, but in year one of the course, we had to do a research proposal. So go and look at an area of mental health that you're interested in. And we hadn't to do the bit of research, but we had to do a bit of a proposal about how you might take a bit of research forward. So I thought, why don't I do something on vegan mental health, or what it's like to be vegan, and what impact does that have on your mental health? So I set about doing this piece of work. And at the time, I was really surprised because whilst there's tons of books about cooking or general health, or there's a few about spirituality or physical health, or there was very little about mental health at the time, which struck me as being a bit odd. And then even some of the bits of research that existed at the time, often vegans get lumped in with kind of general plant-based eaters who don't have a kind of ethical component, or we get put in with vegetarians, sometimes even semi-vegetarians, whatever that means. Um, so that was middle of the halfway through the course, and I thought that's a bit strange. So I parked it because I was busy doing my course, and then got to the end of my course and I started seeing clients. And so I see non-vegan clients and I see vegan clients, but I felt like there was quite a number of vegans that make contact and wanting my help. So uh, uh, there's a wide variety of reasons why people come to see me. Luckily, CBT is quite an effective mode of counselling for a wide variety of mental health issues. It is backed up with quite a lot of robust scientific data to say it's very effective for low mood or depression, for anxiety, trauma. You can use it or variations of it for compassion fatigue, self-esteem issues, phobias, etc., etc. So yeah, so I do find there's quite a number of vegan clients come to see me, and often there's not one particular issue they come to see me, but I suppose one of the issues we find, particularly with new vegans, is it kind of disrupts your social connections. It disrupts your sense of self, I suppose. And we know that connecting with others, or doesn't have to always be people, is really vital component part of good well-being. And I suppose if you think about what happens when you go vegan, um, number one, your identity does change, particularly if it's ethically motivated. It can be quite a profound shift, both in how you feel about yourself now. There can often be shame about maybe things you have done in the past, by participating in violence, abuse towards animals, just maybe through sheer consumption of animal-derived products. But it also disrupts your daily life as well, like your relationships. If you think, I am aware that I was very, very fortunate that my partner went vegan at the same time as me, and I think that I'm really grateful for that. But I've heard so many conversations over the years of people who are very, very passionate animal advocates, but they've got a non-vegan partner, and how difficult that can be. Your family as well. Obviously, we have lots of, regardless of what religion, or even if you're not religious, there's certain events. Thanksgiving in America maybe is a classic example, or Christmas, where often, it might traditionally involve certain animals that are consumed at that time of year, and it's can be quite difficult to navigate that as a as a vegan. And then even to make things even more difficult, sadly, there's if you look at networks or connections, or whether they're virtual or in person, not all of them are positive. I mean, I've spent time in social media groups that have been quite toxic or quite negative, or and that can be quite difficult as well. So I think it's Claire Mann, who wrote the foreword to my book, who wrote the book Dystopia. I remember reading her book and think, wow, this is great. And that also, when I finished reading, I thought, why have I not read something else like this before? So I did reach out to her and told her that I liked it, but that was part of the reason why I thought it's good to see clients. And most of the clients who come to see me, I'll see them for maybe 12 sessions, and there's a structure involved in it, and we'll take some kind of measurements at the beginning of therapy and at the end of therapy, and the vast majority of people will exit therapy feeling in a better place. That it's an overwhelming percentage of the clients that come to see me will be in a better place come the end of counselling. And that's not because I'm brilliant. It's not because I've got a magic wand. I always say to people, it doesn't work unless people are ready for it and also willing to put the work in. It's a collaborative kind of process. But I suppose the reason why I then decided to write the book was to do with that gap that I saw when I was doing my course, and also as kind of realization that not everyone can afford to see a counsellor. Not everyone might feel comfortable seeing a counsellor or seeing a therapist. So I thought, can I do something that might bring the available information, bring it together as one resource, and it might help people start to maybe get their life in a slightly better place, so they're able to go on and I
and
survive and thrive. Yeah. So
and like you were saying, so many vegans do struggle with feelings of isolation in a
yeah,
non-vegan environment, dealing with family members and just even activists, and having to see, whether you're seeing the
yeah,
films or the pictures, and you're trying to advocate for a better world, and and trying to figure out why aren't people really understanding what you're trying to share with them, because um, I believe that most people have a good heart,
yeah,
majority of
yeah,
people, and it's just the fact that we have been disconnected from our own, self knowledge of not harming animals, because when we come into this world, we're vegan,
yeah,
and then we're taught not to be. So I think one of the great things about having a vegan counselor is that you are a vegan counselor, because not
yeah,
everyone who's a counselor or psychiatrist or a psychologist are
yeah,
vegans. So I think it's hard for them to put themselves
yeah.
into one's own mind when you're a vegan, because they're not seeing things the way you're seeing it, the way you're understanding, everything that's going around. They're not really seeing that because they're still part of that non-vegan world.
Yeah, so yeah, I totally agree with you. So you touched on quite a number of things. Again, there's a couple of chapters in the book where it's not a book about, there's plenty of books about how to be a good advocate or a good activist, but I did think it was quite important for people to think about their finding a place within the kind of wider movement that maybe fits their skills, fits their temperament, and is something they can make a positive contribution to convince more people to be vegan, but also in a way that they can look after themselves as well. So it might not everyone can maybe go and do street activism or grassroots activity, but you might have some skills. You might be good at writing. You might be good at graphic design. You might be, and there's lots and lots of organisations that are needing help with that. And I think it's really important because that can promote, as well as being good for the animals and good for the movement. It can be good for your sense of well-being as well, because you're not it maybe negates the nagging feeling that you're not doing enough or you're not contributing, or and that can be really helpful. I touch upon some of the maybe people having to improve their skills in terms of advocacy, because it can be really frustrating if you're having conversations and you don't think it's landing. So again, I touch upon some resources which go into that in a wee bit more detail, that hopefully new vegans or people that are maybe doing a reset can think, right, how do I go and upskill and become a bit more effective? But the issue of whether people should seek out a vegan counsellor or not, I certainly touch upon that on the book. And I've been asked about this quite a lot. So yeah, so in theory, you shouldn't have to seek out a vegan counsellor, because all counsellors, regardless of whatever mode of therapy they're offering, we're all encouraged that we meet people where they are, and we don't cause any harm, so that's the theory of it. So a non-vegan counsellor should be able to meet an ethical vegan client and meet them where they are and find out what they need and work with them, etc. But sadly, I've had some conversations with non-vegan therapists, off the record sort of thing, just where they've been speaking freely, and it would give me some cause for concern about how they might handle vegan clients, just because I know some friends that still can't shake this idea that veganism is just a diet, it's just a dietary choice, which we know is so much more than that, and it's certainly a fundamental part of my identity and my well-being. And I'm not religious, but I do think it's a bit of a spiritual calling for me, I have to say. But so I do. There's a chapter about it, and the good thing is these days it is a lot easier if somebody's looking for therapy to just go and do a search and find vegan counsellors. So it is a lot easier. There might be occasions where people, for whatever reason, maybe they've been told there's a specialist for whatever they're trying to deal with, who's a non-vegan counsellor. But there's, again, I include in the book some things that people should think about, and distilled to its most basic form, as if you're going to go and seek out the services of a non-vegan therapist, I would always say be upfront. Contact them beforehand. Say to them, "I'm vegan." It's really important, and see what the response is to that. And if you're not sure about how they respond to that, or uncomfortable with the response to that, then that's not the right person for you. Because we do know in the past, particularly with disordered eating, in the past, that's veganism has been lumped in and been some kind of mental health organizations have regarded sometimes veganism as being a form of disordered eating, and tried to ignore it, and that has the potential to cause tremendous harm. So it's a really, really important consideration, and it's something that I suppose people make sure you go and make contact with your counsellor if it's personally important to you to get a vegan counsellor. It's a lot easier to find them these days, and at least that's one area that you know that you're aligned in your values, and then you can see if they're a good fit beyond that. But yeah, so hopefully I go into that in a wee bit more detail in the book, but you're right, it is an important consideration, because if people go for counselling, they're generally feeling quite vulnerable. And if it's some of that vulnerability is tied to you being vegan, you can imagine how damaging it potentially could be if you're working with a mental health kind of professional, and they're maybe um, confirming the fact that there's maybe some issues to do with this ethical choices that you're making. That's
And
loaded with all sorts of difficulties, I think. And yeah, yeah,
yeah, and I believe that still holds true. I know that it's a little bit more difficult, but if you can
yeah,
find yourself a vegan doctor as well,
yeah,
because for me, my experience has been I go to a doctor and first thing out of
yeah,
the mouth, they don't know me. Oh, I'm
yeah,
going to put you on this medicine. I'm going to put you on that
yeah,
medicine. And I'm like, oh, no, you're
yeah,
not going to put me on any of
yeah,
those medicines. We're going to, dial it back. First of
yeah,
all, I'm vegan. I eat healthy. Let's see what
yeah,
I can do with
yeah,
with how I
yeah,
feed myself and make sure that, because if you're vegan, you can still be a junk food vegan and that
yeah,
could,
you can, you
whatever.
can.
So if I'm like, I'm going to look at how I'm eating and dial it back if I need to dial something back before we start talking about any kind of medicines. And that's why I'm saying, so if you go to a vegan counselor,
Yeah,
if their mentality is something else and you're entrusting them, like you said, you're in
yeah,
a vulnerable place when you go, right?
yeah,
You think that
yeah,
you're safe in a safe space to say whatever you want, but if they don't have the same mindset as you,
yeah,
you got to be careful because they might try to sway you in
yeah.
in a different way. But you're a counselor. I'm going to have your website information on
Okay.
with this podcast, and also I would encourage people to go ahead and find. I believe is on Amazon your book, Vegan Mental Health: How to Survive and Thrive in a Non-Vegan World. Um, and before we go, maybe you could just give us like an example, like you're going to a family reunion or a friend reunion and someone just says something derogative or mocks you because you're vegan, how would you suggest someone would respond?
Yeah, so there's a specific chapter about vegophobia, discrimination and prejudice against vegans, and then so we do talk about that. Obviously, having been vegan for a long, long time, you can get some people that are openly dismissive of you, but quite often over the years, it's more common that people disguise digs as a joke. So I think these days I'm quite upfront about, I'm vegan. I make it quite clear. I'm an ethical vegan. It's nothing. Diet is maybe how people see it, but it's an ethical choice. So I generally will challenge people in a positive way if they were to have a dig, and then try and engage people in positive dialogue. Try and make it clear about why I'm vegan, the reasons why I'm vegan, which I think are quite compelling. We do have a strong argument to be made, and then I just try, if it goes into a kind of very negative discourse and you're just getting nowhere with it, you exit that conversation. The reality is most people are not going to turn vegan on the back of one conversation. However, I think it's my responsibility when I have a discussion with somebody is to try and engage that person in a constructive piece of dialogue, make them uh, uh, give them some information, share some information with them, and then I think if it becomes really negative and it's just not going anywhere, extract myself from that conversation and move on. And so I think it's all about planting seeds. And I think the final thing I would say about this, I used to do street kind of advocacy on kind of street stalls, and there was a guy who used to come to the street stalls, really passionate vegan, and he told me he used to be a troll of vegans online and social media, and he used to actively go out and make fun of vegans, and he went full circle with it. So you can look at that a wide variety of different ways, but I prefer to look at it a positive way and think, well, if he can change, well, maybe most people can change. So strike a rapport, get a bit of a rapport, and then share some information, and then like I say, if it becomes toxic, it becomes aggressive, just get yourself out of there, but don't ever lose sight of the fact you might be planting seeds. You might not see that plant grow, but somebody else further down the line might see the tipping point when that person joins the dots and goes vegan. Because as you said, Nancy, most people are not bad people. Most people are good people, and most people, if you ask them for their identity and their view of animals, most of them would say they wouldn't like to cause harm to animals, even though they're still eating animal um, derived products. So I think it's up to us as advocates to encourage them, plant seeds, and encourage them to maybe bridge that gap between their their sense of identity and their current behaviour and join
I
it
think
together.
I think sharing stories so that people
Yeah,
see that people come to veganism for all kinds of
yeah,
reasons. I think, like you said, answering in a positive way. So if somebody's like doing a joke
yeah,
about veganism to you because they're trying to mock you, maybe putting in a
yeah,
fact in a not
yeah,
in a bad way, but just in a well, true, but here's the reason why I'm doing it. I'm doing it
yeah,
because, I no longer have fibromyalgia. My swelling has gone
yeah,
away. No more migraines. So yeah,
yeah,
I'm doing it because it's good for your health, as opposed to,
yeah,
just joking about it or something like that, to bring it around to a more lighter sense. And maybe
yeah,
next time they'll think twice before trying to, my new thing is when somebody says, how do you get your protein is to say,
yeah,
how do you get your fiber? Because,
yeah,
people are so lacking fiber and they're so worried about the protein that they're
yeah.
killing themselves anyway. So anyway, thank you, Stephen, for being on the Vegan Pulse. It was a pleasure. I will have all the information for the viewers so that if they want to contact you or, get in touch with you as a counselor or, I'll have a tab to where your book is at. So if somebody wants to purchase it, that would be great because you know what I say. If you got a pulse, you got a purpose, go vegan and support vegans.
Yeah, definitely. It's very important, isn't it? We are a community that's trying to help each other because we've got a common goal. I think that is an important message, I think. Yeah,
And let's help each other in love and compassion while we're doing this
yeah,
advocacy for veganism.
yeah.
Let's not fight amongst each other. Let's just do it collaboratively, move forward for a better world for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. And it's a lot better for you as well. If you're not fighting with everybody and you're working together and you're collaborating and you're being nice to other people, it actually helps your mood, your well-being. It makes you feel a bit better than constantly being at war with everyone. And I've been there. I'm not an angel. I've got involved in arguments and I've lost chunks of time and thought, what was the point of that? So I try and these days just have more positive engagement with people, and I tend to find that's more effective as well. So thank you,
Thank,
Nancy.
thank you, Stephen.
Take care.
Nice to see you. Take care.
Bye.